I had planned to do a video, tell a little bit about the background of this song. It's an old hymn called Higher Ground. Been one of my favorites for a long time. Wasn't able to find a whole lot though. I found a lot about the writer of the hymn, Johnson Oatman, but most of those places that said they had a story, behind it, really didn't have the inspiration for the song or anything. Maybe he was just sitting around, reading scripture one day or contemplating on the certain scripture and was inspired to write this song. We don't know for sure. Maybe someone does. If someone does have that, if you want to leave in the comments a little more about it. I know that he wrote a lot of songs, Johnson Oatman Jr., but this particular song I just couldn't find much on. But I do know some things that come to mind in my own mind, and I'm reminded of straying from God as a young man, and I was saved as a very young age. Just in early teens, and straight away then later on. I was about 29 years old when God really got me turned around, and had been dealing with me for a year or two, and brought me back. And for years I had really hadn't grown as a Christian, and when God got a hold of me and got me turned around finally, I was pretty ashamed because I'd worked the heavy construction. I'd worked sawmills, cutting timber. I felt like quite a man physically, but spiritually, I was unfortunately still a midget or a dwarf. Nowhere near what I should have been. And I felt so ashamed of that. And boy, I started making changes. I started studying. Excuse me. Got kind of a dry throat. It's 44 degrees here in Romania this morning, and throat's kind of dry. But another thing comes to mind with this is an account also where sometimes God just lifts us up and places us on that higher ground. And as the chorus says in here, Lord, lift me up and let me stand. And at the same time, we should be climbing to a higher goal. Of course, God's ultimately the one that that brings us up. We can't do it ourselves. But I'm reminded of an account of when I worked years ago with an organization called Underground Evangelism during the years of the Soviet oppression, the communist oppression of the Eastern European nations. I don't remember which country this was in, possibly Germany. But as communists moved into parts of that area, people thought they were going to get liberated from the evils of Hitler, and those that ended up under the Soviet control found out they were just as bad as shape as they had been under Hitler. And one man was arrested and threatened to be beaten if he didn't denounce his faith and quit preaching the gospel of Christ. And he refused. They beat him mercilessly, and still he wouldn't recant. They finally brought his son in, who I think, if I remember correctly, was about 12 years old, and threatened to beat him, and the son urged the dad not to give in to them. And so they beat the son then, and by the time they got through, they beat him just as mercilessly as they had the dad, and trying to get the dad to recant, and blood all over the walls. Someone asked him later on how they got through it, and Man said that it's just like the Lord just lifted him up when it really got bad, and didn't endure any of the pain, and didn't feel any of the pain at that time. Had been lifted up above the circumstances. I'm pressing on the upward way to heights I'm gaining every day, still praying as I'm onward bound. Lord, plant my feet on higher ground. Lord, lift me up and let me stand, my faith on heaven's tableland, a higher plane than I have found. Lord, plant my feet on higher ground. My heart hath no desire to stay where doubts arise and fears dismay. Though some may dwell where these abound, my prayer, my aim is higher ground. Lord, lift me up and let me stand, my faith on heaven's tableland, a higher plane than I have found. Lord, plant my feet on higher ground. I want to live above the world, though Satan's darts at me are hurled, for faith has caught the joyful sound, the song of saints on higher ground. Lord, lift me up and let me stand, my faith on heaven's tableland, a higher plane than I have found. Lord, plant my feet on higher ground. I want to scale the utmost height and catch a gleam of glory bright, but still I pray till heaven I found. Lord, lead me